The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Machines beeped quietly, but my dad's voice was loud enough to drown them all. "Pay rent or get out," he yelled, his face red and trembling with rage. I was 21, recovering from surgery, barely able to sit up. And yet here he was, demanding money like it was the only thing that mattered in the world. I tried to explain that I didn't have it, that I was focused on healing, that I had no strength to argue, but he didn't care. He leaned in, his hand swinging like it had a life of its own. The slap landed across my cheek, a sharp sting that made my vision blur. I tasted blood, felt the tears burn, and for a moment, the hospital walls seemed to close in. Hey, if you enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the bell. Your support means everything and helps me keep creating. Thank you so much. All the years of trying to be good enough, of bending and folding to every expectation, came crashing down in a heartbeat. The doctors looked on, unsure if they should intervene. The nurses whispered, shocked, but I didn't flinch. My body trembled, but something in me clicked, something old and buried that refused to break. I realized this wasn't just about money. It was never about money. It was about control, about fear, about proving power over someone weaker. And I wasn't going to let him have that anymore. I took a deep breath, focusing on the rise and fall of my chest, counting the beeps, the breaths, the heartbeat of my own life. This wasn't a hospital battle. This wasn't a slap on the face. This was the moment I decided to fight back, not with fists, not with words, but with action that would shock him in ways he couldn't imagine. I sat up straighter, wiped the blood from my lips, and let the quiet settle around me. My mind raced with every option, every possible way to reclaim my power. This was my body, my space, my life. And no one, not even my father, was going to take that from me again. The fear that had been ingrained in me for years shifted into focus. I felt it steady in my bones, a plan precise, unstoppable. The hospital was no longer a place of vulnerability. It had become the stage for my first real act of independence. And the moment I decided, my heart didn't race with panic anymore. It beat with clarity, with resolve, with the certainty that what came next would change everything. Because sometimes the hardest slap isn't the one that hits your face. It's the one that finally awakens your courage. The moment after the slap, the room seemed to hold its breath. My dad's hand still tingled against my cheek, but I didn't shrink. I didn't cry. I just stared at him with a calm he wasn't expecting. For years, he had thrived on fear, on obedience, on me bending until I broke. But now, something had shifted. I reached into my hospital bag and pulled out my phone, pretending to scroll. But really, I was calling someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my uncle. The one who had believed in me when no one else had. The one who had always said, don't let them define you. Don't let them win. I didn't need him to fight for me. He would just be my witness, my anchor. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to remain steady as my dad yelled again. What are you doing? I said nothing. I just kept scrolling. The nurse came closer, glancing nervously at my dad. Sir, please, this isn't appropriate, she said. He waved her off, his ego bruised more than anything else. He didn't understand that I had already moved past him, that his threats were meaningless. I had saved up every bit of money I could from odd jobs, tutoring, and small freelance work. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And now I had a plan that would ensure he couldn't touch me or my future again. I started arranging hospital discharge papers with the social worker. I made sure every detail was in my favor. My own room, no unnecessary interference, and legal notices if anyone tried to stop me. Every move was calculated, every word carefully chosen. My father's yelling turned into a mix of confusion and disbelief. You're leaving? He finally spat. Yes, I said, voice steady, eyes locked on his. I am leaving this hospital, and I am taking control of my life. I didn't need permission. I didn't need approval. For the first time, I realized how much of my own life I had been giving away to people who never valued me. This slap, this outburst, was just the final push I needed to break free. Over the next few days, I quietly finalized my plans. I arranged for my savings to be moved into accounts he couldn't touch, rented a small apartment across town, and hired a few lawyers to make sure that any attempt at intimidation would be met with legal action. Every move was invisible, calculated, and untraceable. The shock on my father's face the first time I walked out of that hospital in my own clothes, carrying my own bag, was priceless. He opened his mouth to yell, to demand, to threaten, but the words died on his lips. He realized too late that his control over me was gone forever. I even set up a few small surprises. Auto deposits, legal notices, and reminders that my independence wasn't just a threat, it was reality. Every attempt he made to manipulate or intimidate me would fail, and I would be ready. The final piece of my plan was simple, yet devastatingly effective. I sent a single message to my parents. I am alive. I am independent. And nothing you do can take that away from me. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. No shouting, no pleading, no threats, just the cold realization that I had outmaneuvered them without ever raising my hand. In that hospital room, I didn't just survive a slap. I survived a lifetime of fear. I survived being told I was worthless, and I survived the family who tried to control me. Because from that moment on, I wasn't just their child. I was my own person, my own protector, my own authority. And nothing, not a slap, not a yell, not a lifetime of manipulation, would ever take that from me again. I walked out of that hospital not broken, not beaten, but reborn. And every step I took echoed with the certainty that I would never, ever be powerless again. The moment I stepped out of the hospital, the weight of years of fear lifted off my shoulders. My father's words, my stepbrother's slap, my mother's passive approval, they no longer mattered. I was finally free. I walked with purpose, carrying nothing but my bag and a newfound resolve. I moved into the small apartment I had rented months ago, the one my parents didn't know existed. It was modest, but it was mine, and for the first time, that mattered more than luxury. I started reconnecting with people who genuinely cared, not those bound by blood, but by obligation and manipulation. Friends, mentors, even distant relatives who had always admired my resilience, but had stayed out of my family's chaos. Every day, I reclaimed pieces of my life. I opened my savings account, arranged automated payments for necessities, and quietly set up legal protections against anyone trying to interfere. Each step was deliberate, a quiet rebellion against the years of control and abuse. Weeks later, my father tried calling. I let it ring. My mother sent messages, guilt-laden and pleading. I ignored them all. I realized that forgiveness wasn't required. Survival and independence were. My stepbrother, once emboldened by his threats, stopped showing up. Even my dad's threats lost their power. In that silence, I discovered strength I never knew I had. I could build, protect, and thrive on my own. And in that freedom, I finally understood that escaping their toxic hold wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I was no longer their victim. I was unstoppable,